So guys, let's understand the float function, which is one of the typecasting. Now the float is a built-in function in Python. It returns float object for any argument, yeah, for integer or a string literal. So as we had for integer, yeah, it converts integer literal to float. So same way, float converts integer or string literal to float. Yeah, it converts integer literal, float literal, string literal to a float float object. Yes, float object. Yeah. So let's see some example as we had earlier. So suppose I have a equals to 10. Yeah. And if I say I say a equal to float 10. And let me print a. You'll find it will add a decimal place automatically, which is a float. And if I try to print type of a, it is a float. Yeah. So it has converted an integer to a float. Yeah. Now if I try to put a float in a, so 9.99, yeah, it is still converted to a float. Yeah. So it is already a float. It's the same as what we did, yeah, earlier. Now, if my argument is an integer, which we saw earlier, which is getting converted to float, yeah. But if I uh, now if I try to convert a string or a what I can do is if I put this number in a double quote, it is a string. So if I say earlier before putting float, I say a equals to, I'll print this way. Let me not put this. Yeah. Well, let's put this in double quotes. I'll not put float. And let's see what it gives me. So it should give me a type as string. Yeah. You see this. Now, if I try to put it as float, same way as we did earlier for int, if I try to convert this string to a float now, it should convert it to a float. See this? Now, if again, we'll try to add something to this. So if I try to add something a plus 30, it should give me an error because it is a string. Yeah, we cannot add. Can only concatenate string. It cannot add it's not an integer. Now, if I try to add here, I'll try to put the same statement below for the next commands that we have added. It will add 30 and it will give me 39.9, which you can see here. So it is getting added. So it is converted to float. Now you need to be very careful while this conversion. So suppose that you will also get an error. Sometimes people write numbers in the form of by adding commas to the numbers to separate the decimal, separate the thousands or lakhs or millions. They add commas or commas in between, which will not be converted. Yeah, you'll see this. If I try to make it float, see what happens. See, this is error. Could not convert string to a float because there is a comma in between. So you need to be very careful while making this conversions. Yeah. Now, the reason for value error here is the presence of the comma. Yeah, that's why you are getting a value error. Yeah. Now, for the purpose of string to float conversion, the scientific notation of float point is also considered valid. So suppose sometimes you get this kind of scientific notations. So if I get A equals to float of, you have the scientific notation like 1.00 E4. Yeah. And if I say print A, also give me type of A. Let's see whether it is getting converted or not. Yeah. See, it has got converted. And this particular thing has got added. Yeah. Because of the float conversion. So this is scientific way of writing a number. Yeah. Now, if I try to write it this way, it will also, it's an again a scientific way of writing things. If I say E minus 4, yeah. So it will give me decimal points 0.00001 and the type should be of float. Yeah. Let's see if it gives me the right answers. So it is performing the required output. It will not take this much amount of time. Let me run it again. Float 1.00 E4. Okay. Yeah. See this? So for the purpose of a string to float converters, a scientific notation is okay to work with, wherein this comma iteration is will not work. Yeah. So that will come up with an value error if you have a comma in between. Yeah. So that's it for float function in typecasting. Let's see the string in our string function in our next recording, our next video.